Bob Sapp picks him up and pile drives him.
Oy.
Like drops all of his weight. Watch this. I'll play this. Because Bob Sapp was so big, he looked like the final character in a video game. He didn't look like a real person.
Fala galera, tudo certo? Sejam bem-vindos ao Arena Nocaute. Hoje vamos falar de um lutador brasileiro que deixou Joe Rogan verdadeiramente impressionado. Esse atleta, com uma resistência fora do comum e uma técnica impecável, enfrentou um dos maiores desafios de sua carreira e conseguiu marcar seu nome na história do esporte. Joe Rogan descreve esse confronto como uma das lutas mais impactantes que ele já viu, e temos certeza de que você vai se lembrar desse momento. Vamos acompanhar o vídeo legendado da entrevista com Joe Rogan. E no final, queremos saber, vocês se lembram desse lutador e dessa luta épica? Mas antes de mais nada, não esqueça de deixar o seu like e se inscrever no canal para mais conteúdos como esse.
Japan during the day had some of the best fights. They had arguably the best heavyweight of all time, Fedor Emelianenko. He was their heavyweight champion. And they had Minotauro Nogueira, who is arguably the best heavyweight jiu-jitsu fighter of all time, who was their champion at one point in time too. And at one point in time, Nogueira fought Bob Sapp. Bob Sapp was 370 pounds with abs. He was one of the biggest guys I've ever seen in my fucking life. Sorry, I'm trying to clear my throat with the cough button. But, and Bob Sapp pile-drived him and fucked up Nogueira's neck essentially for the rest of his life. Like, he had neck problems for a long time after that because Bob Sapp picked him up, and Nogueira's like 240. Bob Sapp picks him up and pile-drives him.
Oy.
Like, drops all of his weight. Watch this. I'll play this. Because Bob Sapp was so big, he looked like the final character in a video game. He didn't look like a real person.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Dude, he did. Go to the beginning of it, though.
Oh.
Go to the beginning of it, though. No. The beginning of it, it's like you see the two of them.
Find different videos.
You see the two of them facing off against each other.
Hold on.
That's it. So this is Bob Sapp. Look at the size of him, bro.
Wow.
Look at the size of him. He was so big. And Nogueira at the time was the best heavyweight jiu-jitsu fighter we had ever seen. He was the heavyweight champion in Pride and widely regarded to be the best heavyweight on earth at the time. And Nogueira shoots in on Bob Sapp, and right away, Bob Sapp picks him up and pile drives him on his head. I mean, this is crazy.
Is that straight away in the first 5 seconds?
Well, he doesn't want to stand up with the guy. The guy's so much bigger than him. He wants to take him to the ground. And look at this, though. Boom! But I mean, literally drops him on his fucking head. The head is the first thing that impacts it. His neck compresses, and his neck was fucked for a long time after that. But that's how tough Nogueira was. And still is. I mean, Nogueira was like one of the toughest of all time. But anyway, Nogueira, I think it made it into the second round. Nogueira snuck out the backside, got on top of him, and eventually gets him in an armbar and submits him. And it was crazy. But by all accounts, Nogueira's neck was fucked forever after this. And it only makes sense if you look at that impact. I mean, that had to herniate some discs. But it's just, Bob was so big, there's no way someone could be that heavy and they could keep their cardio going. It was just almost impossible. But Nogueira is so good at jiu-jitsu and was one of the first heavyweights that had a real, legitimate, lethal guard. Because a lot of the bigger heavyweight guys, they're more used to being on top. Because a big guy like Nogueira, you know, in a jiu-jitsu class when he's learning, is more likely to be the guy that winds up on top because he's heavier. Look at Bob Sapp tries to stomp him. Because in Pride, you could stomp people. You could do soccer kicks to their head while they're down. They had different rules. So he gets him in an arm bar, almost gets him in a triangle here. But then they go to the ground, and then when they go to the ground, this is the, I think this is the final exchange. When he gets him in the ground, he eventually gets him in an arm bar, and he taps. And I was watching it with my friends from jiu-jitsu, and when Nogueira got him in that arm bar, we jumped off the couch. We were like, yes! Because jiu-jitsu was supposed to be the martial art where the smaller, more skillful man could beat a larger, more powerful foe. And that was always like what you would think martial arts should be, like in the Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah.
But in reality, big guys most of the time fuck up small guys. Until jiu-jitsu came along. And when Royce Gracie showed in the early days of the UFC was that jiu-jitsu was so technical, and there was so much advantage in knowing jiu-jitsu. Oh, here it is. So he hits this switch here, and then he gets him on his back. And then when he gets him on his back, Bob Sapp was exhausted. Like, he couldn't believe that Nogueira was still fighting after all this time. And then he locks up this arm, and then he throws the right leg over, and he gets the arm bar right here. And we were watching this like, oh, my God, he's got it. Oh, my God, he's got it. And then when he separates the hands, Nogueira separates the hands here, and Bob taps. Look at that. And we were like, yes! 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 Nogueira was a hero to the jiu-jitsu world.
What year was that?
Oh, my God. I want to say 2003. 2002.
Shit.
Yeah, man. I don't even know if I was working for the UFC back then.
There probably wasn't a lot of jiu-jitsu around, and now it's
There was.
in every second.
There was still a lot, because after Royce Gracie had won the UFC in 1993, jiu-jitsu schools erupted. In Southern California, there was a shit ton of them. Because when I started jiu-jitsu in 96, there was Carlson Gracie, there was the Machados, there was Hickson Gracie, there was Royce Gracie, and Horian Gracie had a school in Torrance. There was a lot of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right.
It had already blossomed because it was so effective, and because of Royce's victory in the early UFCs, it had opened people's eyes to this martial art that was so much more effective in these situations of style, like individual stylists versus individual stylists. Like now everybody knows jiu-jitsu, and everybody knows kickboxing, everybody knows Muay Thai, everybody knows everything.
Yeah.
Like to be an elite martial artist, you essentially have to know a little bit of everything. But back then, these guys were specialists in the early days of the like 93. And the specialists, like these judo guys, thought, I'm going to go beat the jiu-jitsu guy. And the boxer thought, I'm going to go beat the wrestler. And we got a chance to understand like what was the best. And early on, before people learned jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu was king. And it was king because of that guy, because of Royce Gracie.
Really?
Yeah, and Nogueira was a direct descendant of Royce Gracie in terms of like the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu being applied against bigger, stronger foes.